to the Rich in Purpose Childhood Trauma Summit. Today we're here with Dr. Casey Lacey, and we're going to talk about how our early childhood can affect the way we lead and show up for work today. Welcome, Dr. Lacey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I know that before we start the questions, I know that you left home at 16, were a doctor by the time you were 26. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened and then how that also influences your work that you do today?
Absolutely. So again, like abbreviated version of my journey, but I actually moved out on my own at 16, just grew up in a very kind of tumultuous family life, made the decision to do that. And then I went on to college, got my undergraduate degree in psychology, went on to get my graduate degree, finishing my PhD at the age of 26. And again, a lot of that journey there for me was really trying to find and understand a lot of the things I saw growing up. And so I think a lot of people go into psychology because it's me search. And for me, I wanted to understand relationships. My mom had been married multiple times, dad, sister, everybody. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out so I can just do it one time. But I really also got interested in especially the workplace dynamics and leadership. And for myself, school was always my safe place. And so at home was not always. And so school became that predictable environment where I went in, I did the work, I got good grades. And so I think that's why I just kept going to school forever. And then I actually went after and kept working for a college. So I worked for a college because that was such a good time in my life where I actually really got to be more my age because I had to grow up really quickly. And so loved working with college students. So did that many, many years. I was a professor over Cal State Health Services and also ended my career in higher education as the Vice President Dean of Student Life. And now on my own doing coaching using my background as a psychologist, and I help women in organizations really focus on leadership, but also confidence is my favorite thing to talk about.
Great. Yeah, well, we got to have confidence. And the one thing we know that if you can believe in yourself, then you can accomplish great things. And it looks
Yes.
like you believed in yourself and now you're accomplishing great things.
Yes, thank you.
So the first questions I want to ask you is, well, we know that childhood experiences can affect the way that we show up for work, but how does it show up between like trauma and leadership skills?
Yes, yeah. In lots of ways. So it's one of those things, if we don't do the work on ourselves, it will show up. It'll show up in our relationships. It'll show up in our work relationships. It'll show up in our environment. All of those different things are limiting beliefs. And so when I talk about confidence or even just leadership, there's different saboteurs that get in the way. So whether it's like people pleasing and imposter syndrome, perfectionism, being a martyr, a lot of these saboteurs impact our confidence and they show up in the workplace. So again, it's really important to do your work on yourself so that you can make sure that you're not carrying that. I always parallel it to if you were in a bad breakup, a bad relationship, if you don't work on that and heal those stories or experiences, then you take that into the next relationship as well. And that's very similar of our personal lives really impact our work lives as well.
Well, the one thing that, and I had this experience for myself is that not only am I an overachiever, but I really think sometimes that accountability, right? And I can do all of this and I kind of overworked. How
Oh
does
yeah.
that, because I actually, the one thing of doing the research on this topic, I'm like, I did that and I never really realized that maybe it wasn't a strength. Maybe it was just something that was trauma oriented in myself. So tell me how that kind of the overworking and over responsibility plays out.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely lived it too, Jamie. So again, this comes from my own experience, but also coaching other women and other leaders in this situation. If we grew up in an environment that was, unstable or however you want to label, I don't like to put labels, but if you grew up in an environment where you had to essentially hustle for your worth, then you're going to do that later in work life. So for myself, again, I talked about school being this safe place for me. Well, if I did X results, or performed, then I got good grades. And it's the same thing at home. We learn to kind of people please or become perfectionists because we're going to hustle, hustle, hustle. That means I'm safe. And we also then tie our own value to busyness. And so we're in such a culture right now, like a hustle culture, do more with less, don't sleep, work, all of those different things. But we do that at the expense of ourselves. And we do that because we grew up early on with these messages of that I have to perform to be loved. I also have found individuals where it's safer if I am a people pleaser. So I'm going to say yes, I'm going to be agreeable. And I work a lot with women. So there's a lot of the socialization there to be like liked and, agreeable and kind and polite. that's safer for women. And that's safer a lot of times if you grew up in these traumatic kind of childhood experiences, it's safer in the workplace too. So you lack boundaries, you become people's doormat, you say yes to things that you don't really want to say yes to, and you really lose your voice and also kind of your personality. And I talk about this like phenomenon for myself, and it's actually in my book that I'm writing right now about chameleon. I became a chameleon in so many ways. I would shift my colors, who I was, what I thought, what I wore, how I felt based upon the people I was around because that was safe. And if I did that, then they liked me. And then that also meant more safety. So there's just so much that's wrapped up into it. Is as human beings, we want to be liked. That's normal. We want to belong. But especially when we grow up in trauma, how we process that shows up in the workplace too.
Right. Well, for me, I always wanted to be a people pleaser. And,
Yeah.
so many times you don't realize that it's affecting you adversely because, you get praise and you get, oh, Jamie does this,
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Lacey can help with that. But over time, it just becomes so burdensome to always be
Yeah.
a people pleaser that it doesn't really work. So I'd
Yeah.
like for you to go over, Dr. Lacey, setting boundaries seems to be hard for a lot of people with
Oh,
had
yeah.
experienced a little bit of childhood adversity, we'll say. Tell us a little bit of how you go about or how you can teach people how to set boundaries in the workplace and really kind of achieve what you're trying to achieve rather than hoping that you'll achieve it.
Yeah. I think when it comes to boundaries, so boundaries are really just our rules for how we let people treat us. And especially if we grew up in an environment where those rules weren't healthy, we then can take those dynamics later. And so for when I work with clients or a lot of the different keynotes or talks that I do, I talk about boundaries and how important they are. You teach people how to treat you. You let them treat you a certain way. You have a minimum standard of things. And so the first thing is getting clear on what your boundaries are. What do I actually want? What is important to me? Is my time? And especially the workplace, it could be like, hey, I'm not going to take on more work unless you give me a raise or a title or whatever it may be. But again, the boundaries, it's you get to decide. The hard part about boundaries is that they're complicated because they deal with people. People are complicated. And so boundaries are always changing. They're personal. Sometimes you have to reevaluate them. Sometimes you have to reinforce them because people don't respect your boundaries. But again, a lot of times with the women I work with, I do this when it's like a whole group of keynote. I literally make everyone, we count down and we say the word no together. And I'm like, you do actually know the word. Like it is, you can physically say it. But again, it goes back to like, if I'm in a place where continue to say yes at the expense of myself, is this a true yes? So one thing I teach is like, if it's not a hard heck yes, I want to do this, then it's a no for me. Especially when I'm in this phase too of like I'm overextended. And a lot of times, again, high achievers, we take on and do more and grow, but we get to this place of this road of burnout. And if you're at this phase too where you're doing too much, you've got to start to figure out. So boundaries can be that I'm going to delegate to somebody else. I always talk about the eights. Delegate. I'm going to renegotiate terms. I'm going to appreciate what's working, and I'm going to eliminate tasks that no longer serve me. And it really just takes practice. So the first step, boundaries can sound overwhelming, but maybe start small. Maybe it's like your mom shows up with that chocolate cake and you're like, I'm going to say no. I'm trying to be healthy today. I'm going to say no. That's a little thing that you can do so that you can kind of build that muscle. That's that like confidence muscle of practicing to start other boundaries. But A, you got to know what your boundaries are and really get really clear on your values. Like for me, I have small kids right now. And so like what is a boundary related to my time? Well, I want to be able to be present and pick them up. So, like, I have hard boundaries around my time with those things. But again, at different phases in my life, I didn't. My boundaries look different. So, you've got to know for yourself what do you want? And how are you feeling in those situations? And what are you willing to allow and not willing to allow anymore?
Well, I hope that the first one setting boundaries is not showing up with a piece of cake because I struggle with the sugar.
You're gonna say yes. Oh, I just had it. I literally, I was an example. My mom brought a chocolate cake last night. It was really good. I did have a piece, but I didn't want to say no. It was a yeah. It was a hard yes for me. So
Yeah. But when you are a people pleaser, right, it seems like that becomes a hard task
yes,
to set that boundary, even if it's a small one. And that's
yeah,
why I really believe that, in this journey that we're on to overcome our childhood, is that you have to have people like yourself and other coaches because it's like when you were going over the boundaries right there, I could just go through in my heart and I'm gonna say, well, that's gonna be tough and that's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unless you have someone that can encourage you when you say, well, I set a boundary, but then I didn't keep it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you have someone like yourself to encourage you to keep going and to evaluate why you didn't keep it,
Yeah.
it's just a hard thing to keep going, I
Yeah.
think.
And I would add too is like that inner critic gets in there of like, okay, let's say you said, I'm going to say no to the chocolate cake. That's our silly example. But, and then you said yes. Don't guilt or shame yourself. Like, I think that's part of it is we live in this shame cycle of no, I set this boundary. Oh gosh, I didn't set the boundary. I said yes when I, meant to say no. Like, look back at yourself with love because being caught in that like shame cycle also does not help us. But yeah, I love to also have people in my life who are good examples. There are people in your life that set boundaries. Watch how they do it. Like truly success leaves clues. Like you can figure out and learn from somebody else. Like, wow, they're really good with boundaries. And if I look at that, I don't go to this like comparative despair of like, oh, well, they set boundaries and I suck at it. No, I look at it like, well, they can do it. I can do it too. And so, what does that look like for me? And it's contextual, it's personal. And so, my set of rules, my set of boundaries are not going to be your set of rules or boundaries, but you also have to start listening to yourself and get clear of like, what are your rules and boundaries? What are the hard no's? What are the things that we can kind of negotiate? And what are my hard yeses? So, I love what you said there in terms of just like thinking about that for yourself and having other people to support you, like coaches or therapists or friends or mentors.
Well, the one thing I've noticed that, if you depend on your friends to help you, sometimes they like to keep you where you are.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe not so important to keep them as your advisors as it is with mentors and coaches and therapists and stuff like that to kind of keep you going.
Yeah. I would argue though that you need new friends. Sorry. Because it's really like for me, I think we always say your network is your net worth. You are the five people that you hang around with. I also was at a conference a couple of days ago and they talked about a study that literally like the friends that you hang out with, the five people, you also all are about the same weight because you tend to like eat and do the same activities. And I was like, wow, that just like was interesting to me. And so thinking about for yourself, if you're around friends or have people, at this point in my life, I think that's some of the I don't want to say silver linings of like a traumatic childhood. I'm like, I know how bad it can be. I also have gotten really clear on my boundaries because of what I've learned. I don't tolerate bad behaviors. I also have kids now, and so it's like I feel very protective over them, and I'm just a little bit harder on my boundaries than maybe, I was growing up because I also didn't have the power to. I have the power to, and now the people that are in my life, I choose. Like I choose and I they get to be in my life. I know that's a privilege both ways. And so I'm very selective of that. And if there's individuals that don't want me to rise or grow, then maybe that's something I need to reevaluate that friendship too. So
Right. Well, I have to tell you that I last year I just I changed churches and I got all new friends.
yeah,
And I because I was stuck in a place that I couldn't move forward in that
yeah,
particular area. And then I
yeah,
joined the Napoleon Hill Institute and got five people as a mastermind. And I've accomplished more in the last 9 months than I did in the last 2 years. So
yeah,
I do believe that, you have to kind of evaluate the where your friends are want you to go
yeah.
but it's hard to make that decision to just start over.
Oh, it's so hard.
I know I
Yeah.
look 35, but I'm 65, and to start all over at
We'll say
this
you're
age,
36. So
yeah. To start all over with new
yeah.
friends and a new everything was something that was a little scary, but I can't be more happier that that's what I did.
Yeah, and you're such a good example of that. I mean, I know it's so scary. We get stuck in what's known. And I think especially for individuals that grew up in trauma, I know for myself, there's this craving of stability and things that are known. And getting uncomfortable with the unknown is hard when you're in a trauma environment. But as you said too, it's like sometimes the unknown is so much better. Like even though it's scary and taking that action and changing friends, there's so much better on the other side of joy if you can believe that, rather than just staying stuck in what we know. So,
Right. Well,
yeah.
joy is the key. And then Dr. Like Casey, I said, for those who believe to recognize their trauma-driven patterns, what are some healthy first steps that they can take to create a safer, more authentic relationships at work?
Yeah, yeah. So awareness is key. So you got to understand those patterns. What are the things that affect you? I always say, like, especially if you're a leadership or anybody in work, self-awareness, like you got to be able to look under your own hood to be able to like lead others and do things. But for myself, it was understanding what my triggers were. What are things that maybe were upsetting to me? Maybe if it was like someone talking loud in a meeting, sometimes it can just be something simple like that. To me, that could be triggering. And so understanding for myself, okay, maybe that's not about me when I have that reaction. How do I process that? So awareness is key. And then it's finding someone where you can process stuff with, having a support team. And then the other steps are like, okay, how is this impacting me? Because I truly believe that our past do not have to determine our future. Just because I've had these experiences, I have worked with so many clients or even my own self overcome so much trauma that didn't does not dictate my current situation. It doesn't define me. It doesn't limit me. I think actually gives me a deeper understanding and ability to connect with others than if I didn't have it. And so I'm grateful for those experiences. And so for yourself, like, okay, if there are behaviors that, or experiences that you've had that are getting in your way, that's where we then need to change. We need to look at our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors that are affecting that. So if I have a limiting belief that, I am never going to be promoted, or that I'm not good enough, or that I'm an imposter, or there's no way I can make X dollars, or again, insert whatever it is there, then I need to do some work around that and start to shift what I'm telling myself. And then that's also going to affect my emotions and then also my behaviors. So,
Well, the one thing that I've found is that when you experience the childhood trauma, sometimes you don't realize that some
yeah.
of the things you're doing are really kind of not normal, right? They're
Yeah.
something that you adapted in your childhood experience to remain safe. So
Yeah.
how do you get to know or make that awareness that this may be something that I got from my childhood trauma and it's not a strength now? Because awareness is something that maybe we don't know at this particular minute.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I mean, for me, how I personally did that, it was definitely through therapy, through coaching, through peer, kind of peer mentorship groups and like having those conversations. I think it's kind of tricky. Sometimes we get into this like compare. I always say comparison can be the thief of joy and thief of confidence. I look at someone and think like, oh, they're so much better than me. They didn't, they lived a normal life or whatever it was. Then I feel despair. But then I can look at, okay, well, they have these things really there's an awareness factor of I want whatever they have. And then I go to compare to dare that I can achieve that. And so I think it's just really, getting clear on kind of that thought pattern and where you're at in terms of that comparison with other people, and then just having conversations. Like again, sometimes if you're in a group, it's easy to be like, okay, I'm the one person that's a little different here. But I also like to say, don't make assumptions. I did many a years of therapy with people, and you would be blown away. I mean, a lot of people, when I talk about my story, moving out of my own 16, a lot of people are like, what? You did that. And you look at people and you judge and you assume that they've had this perfect life or perfect family. No one's perfect, like at all. We all have our own stories, our experiences, different levels of trauma, different levels of experiences, and we're all working to heal and become better people. And I think just assuming the best about people and not always going into that compare despair aspect is also really helpful.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we all kind of struggle with is that comparison and the
Yeah.
shame. So I would like to ask you, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm just ready to start my business. I've worked at other places before and been fairly successful, but maybe never reached the top where I thought that I would get. How do I establish that confidence to say, hey, I have the confidence to do whatever it is, especially when you haven't been reinforced with that in your lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to similar what we were talking. Find people in your life that are going to reinforce that. But also, even for myself, I know as like I took this leap and I went out on my own in terms of my business, I was terrified. But you know what? I did it anyways. I did it anyways because I truly felt I had a higher calling in the sense of like having a bigger impact with women in leadership, speaking. And also, so many things nowadays, like we have so much information at literally at our fingertips. We can AI, Google things. So many things are figure outable. And I had to get over this narrative that like I was less than or that I can't do it because other people have done it. I mean, you think of a lot of the like, just different leaders out there or big entrepreneurs, like a lot of them have had difficult past or experiences, but that didn't determine them. So I always tell people like truly confidence is on the other side of taking action. Take an action, take the next action, then the next action. And also, I always say I'm a people pleaser and perfectionist in recovery. For me, the perfectionism I think was a little bit harder than the people pleasing in some ways because perfection was like achieve, hustle, do this. I could control those aspects, but perfectionism is also not real. It's a trap. And at the end of the day, I've realized my relationships are so much deeper and better, and I can have a larger impact if I am authentic and real. And authenticity is not perfect. I'll share my mistakes, and especially as a leader, I always say like when you mess up, you fess up. And so I would share those mistakes with people, and that allowed then people to come to me when they made mistakes. I always joke too, like my favorite mom friends are the ones that like they've made a mistake. They're like, oh my gosh, I was at the park and Sally almost ate a cigarette. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know. Like those are my friends. That's who we want to connect with. And I think even more now than ever, people are truly craving connection. And that connection is so key to those relationships and meaningful relationships. And so authenticity is the key there and just being real.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, it's getting past the shame and the
Oh,
guilt
yeah.
and being able to say, no matter what, I know that this person or this group of people is going to accept me, and I'm going to go ahead and take the risk rather than let it influence what I'm going to do. Because the one
Yeah.
thing we don't want to do is get to the end of life and say, if I'd only done that one thing right, I think
Yeah.
I could have been happier.
Yeah. I always say too, like again, they always say like I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm okay with that. But for some people, like I'm their glass of champagne and I'm gonna go for that. And I have two daughters, and that's why I do the work I do, is I want them to understand that they don't like everybody. So they don't have to like hustle for everybody to like them. And I did that for so long, just because especially when you're not getting that love or acceptance or whatever it may be, insert word there at home, especially early childhood, then you're seeking that from other places, this external validation. And I've got to know that I'm just enough exactly the way I am. So,
Right. And the one thing I realized that without love, you're never going to go the places that you want to go. So
yeah.
find a group of people that you can not only love but also receive the love, which you're not used to a lot of times
Yeah.
when you're in the childhood trauma, and learn to receive it. And then, but without love, I know that most things are not going to be possible.
Yeah.
And I have a question here. How can leaders and organizations start fostering environments that feel emotionally safe and supportive without crossing personal or clinical lines?
Yes. So, one of my favorite topics to talk about is Dr. Amy Edmondson's work of psychological safety. So, psychological safety is this concept in a workplace where I can show up, I can be myself, I can disagree, I can make mistakes without fear of retribution or retaliation. If you don't have this like core component of psychological safety where people can be themselves, now obviously there's like professional things here in terms of dress and the whole list of like professionalism, but if I can't do that, then the workplace, then you lack creativity, innovation, and truly people growing and expanding. And I've been in some very toxic workplaces where, if you disagreed, it was definitely not okay. You were either yelled at in a meeting or you weren't promoted or you were withheld information. And so it's just really watching those aspects of how can I always talk about I modeled when I made mistakes. I talked about concepts like psychological safety. I spent time getting to know my team. What are the things for them? Because especially when you build that relationship as a leader, I get to know them and not saying I have to go into like here's a whole therapy session, tell me your entire life story. But I had emotional intelligence. I was aware when I was in a group meeting and someone would get upset or something, I would follow up. And it's truly just like being a decent human being and caring about the people that you work with and assuming the best about them. Because if you assume the worst, like again, that creates all kinds of other dynamics and really takes away from the psychological safety. So there's at the very cultural level. And that's why I talk about confidence and psychological safety together. That's the magic. Confidence is our individual work, overcoming people pleasing, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. And then the environment and culture that we're creating in workplaces. when those are good, it creates magic in workplaces.
But for us, or for someone that's experienced childhood trauma, and you have a someone leading you that doesn't know anything about it,
Yeah.
and so they're not creating an environment, and nor do they even think about it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you kind of overcome that? I mean, you know, like you were a leader that was very aware, and you
Yeah.
created an environment that was safe for people. But if you
Yeah.
if you're a person that just says, "Look, I'm here. You're supposed to do what I tell you to do. So if you don't, then maybe I will even embarrass you in front of people, or maybe I won't give you the promotion." How do you kind of overcome that and get involved in dealing with that type of a leader?
Yeah. It's really hard. I went through it for many, many years and actually coach women now, like, do you stay or do you go? Because that's ultimately the choice. I think ultimately, and it's very hard when we're dealing with our livelihood and careers and this leader that has power. It's always sad to me when someone's in a leadership role and they don't acknowledge the power dynamics they have over someone. Like, you have the ability to fire me or affect my salary or affect my livelihood. So again, I know it's not always easy just to like up and quit, give your notice, find a different job. Sometimes that is the better option. But for me, I mean, I was in that environment for many years. I wasn't ready. I needed to kind of like work on myself. It was all about timing. And it had gotten to this point too, where I had hit a glass ceiling in my career. I was like, I'm bored. I'm not growing as an individual, and I'm in a very toxic work environment. And so for yourself, you got to make that decision. But during the interim, if you're in it, then you've got to figure out ways to protect your mental health and well-being. You know, sometimes it might be that the leader's not psychologically safe or aware or gets it, but maybe there are other people that do. Maybe you can create a smaller group within, your department. That's what I did. I was like, I saw these other leaders and I found that. I also made sure that I was taking care of myself and I was connected outside of work. So sometimes work was going to be this consuming thing. Well, at least I got my relief or pressure outside, whether that's like working out or community involvement, volunteering, your church community. People have lots of different communities that they find, but finding connection in other ways, getting mentors, having a therapist is also helpful, having an executive coach, having those people where you can talk to. I coach women now where sometimes all they need is for me to tell them, yeah, that's not okay that he yelled at you in the meeting. I am so sorry. And they'll get to that place of when they're ready, but it's finding that support right now when you're in it until you can figure out what the next best step is. Because sometimes, it might look like, oh, that leader's going to leave. Like maybe they're going to retire, or who knows how long they'll be around. But it may also be that, like, okay, enough's enough. And everyone has to decide that for themselves.
Right. I mean, it is hard to to think that, oh, I can just go to other places. But
Yeah.
it's also, you have to love yourself enough to say that
Yeah.
I don't deserve this. And I think
Yes.
that is what so many times we get into, is that we don't really kind of love ourselves enough to make the change. And then all of a sudden we're in a situation where we would like to get out, but we don't love ourselves enough to get out. So
Yeah.
how would you, for instance, if I came to you and I said, this is my situation, and you realize that maybe it's just because you don't love yourself enough, Jamie,
Yeah.
how would you help me get to that part?
Yeah. No, that's so well said. It's really important for us to kind of understand that self concept, and getting clear. I mean, I love to work with people, again, the positive psychologist in me, of like, okay, what are your strengths? And sometimes when I even ask my clients, of like, okay, what are you good at? What do you like? They can't tell me. Like, they can't tell me those things. So we start to pull those things out and really develop this positive self concept. I always say too, our brains are meant to keep us safe. So like the inner lower part of my brain is trying to protect me. And so I have this inner critic. Again, my name's Casey Lacey, which is, a fun name I married into. But a lot of times people call it Cassie. And so I always say my inner critic is Cassie. She's kind of an assy. And so Cassie sometimes needs a snicker. Sometimes she needs a nap. Like, she says a lot of the things like that negative self-talk, but I know it comes from a place to try to protect me. She tries to keep me down and like stuck and like the normal. And there's a lot of the trauma that lives with her. But I look at her with love, and then I learn to apply my best friend filter. I have to actively work on my thoughts, whether that's affirmations or reinforcing positive beliefs, because my brain is trying to keep me safe and it's more likely to look for danger than it is to look for things being well. And we do that to ourselves. So, really, that self love is absolutely the best place to start, because I have seen women, and I did it to myself too, gaslight ourselves and like blame ourselves. Like, oh, yeah, this person yelled at me. Well, I'm just dumb. It's my fault. And so if you're in that where you're in this work situation that doesn't feel good, like trusting yourself and listening again to that inner voice of like, this isn't right. This doesn't look good. And a lot of times too, I would see it at first, the behaviors towards other people. I wasn't targeted at the time. And I was like, ooh, that didn't sit well. Like, that's not okay. So listening to that voice, and those like, you get the hairs on the, back of your neck. And I think as individuals who have been through trauma, we're hyper vigilant. We know when things are off, but we also have to turn up the volume because we've silenced that and normalized it or minimized it or explained it away, that we've got to not do that and realize what's healthy, what's not healthy. So I think that's really key. But that self love, it takes practice, it's doable. And I don't want it to be one of these things where people think it's like never possible, but it's such a better place to be. And working on that confidence, that inner self love, is absolutely magic. And then you're going to get to that place where you're not going to tolerate those behaviors. And then you have to, set some boundaries, have some hard conversations, and figure out how to do that.
I mean, the one thing I've learned to love myself more, but it's saying that is love your neighbor as yourself. And I used to say, I want to love them more than that.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't learned to love myself at that particular time. So I think
Yeah.
it is one of those things that's just so important.
Yeah, there's stuff we say to ourselves that we would never say to anyone else. So if that's your inner dialogue, that's something to be aware of. And I want you to start treating yourself like your best friend. Like you are your best friend and you are the expert on you. So trusting yourself and then treating yourself better.
Well, and again, it is through awareness and growing yourself. And that's the one thing I guess that I just stress so much to people that are watching this is that you have to take action to love yourself, to change the environment that you're in. Because if you just accept it and you stay there and just kind of try to be safe, you're just gonna get frustrated and you're gonna find yourself in these little emotional anger situations. So take action and grow. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that they will do that.
And sometimes what I've seen, especially for like the women that I've worked with, we aren't so great about taking care of ourselves, but sometimes we're more motivated by other people. And so maybe that motivator to work on myself, they always say, like, it's like the plane metaphor, like put your mask on first. When I talk about like self care, and I'm not talking about bubble baths and like I do love a good bubble bath, but like true self care and really loving myself. I'm more likely to do that now because also like I want to do it for my daughters. I want to break the the generational trauma that's I've experienced and show a different way. And so sometimes we're motivated by people that we work with or our partner or something else. Maybe there's other things or other people in your life that can be that initial motivator for you to make that shift and to treat yourself better.
I think that intergenerational trauma is finally becoming something because most of the time, we grew up, we would say, "Oh, I'm never going to be like my father that did all this, or my mother that did that," and sure enough, we were just like them.
Oh yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yes. Or we marry them. Or we marry them,
yeah,
whoever it
yeah.
is.
You know, uh, it says when you think about the future of leadership, what does a trauma-aware workplace look like, and how does that change the way people feel about coming to work?
Oh, in so many ways. Again, I go back to psychological safety, and that's why I just love all of Dr. Amy Edmondson's research and how to create that. And that's why I do a lot of talks on this, like how do you create those environments? For me, that is the way. That's trauma informed. And it's a little bit harder. Like in some ways, yeah, it's easy just to like kind of be jerks and not be trauma informed. Like this is my way or the highway. But that also would say you're gonna go out of business if you don't. I work with a lot of different groups and they're different generational differences, different cultural differences, different personal differences. There's gender stuff, all of the things. We have to be open to learning about each other. We have to come with a curious heart and mind when we're engaging in leadership. And then we create those environments in the workplace. That's what makes workplaces sustainable. And that's what makes people like connected. They're more willing. My team would go above and beyond and do things for me that again, I wouldn't necessarily necessarily ask. I always, if I gave them a task, it was something I was always willing to do too. So I led by example. But I think if you create those environments, you're going to see it in a huge increase in productivity, and just overall satisfaction. People excited to work, then they're more likely to better the place. Like depend, like you're in sales. Like I mean, I worked in higher education. Students have better experiences. Like there's so many other benefits if we create a workplace that is trauma informed, that's aware of people's individual differences, background, or maybe even trauma experiences.
Well, and I think the good thing of it is 5 years ago, nobody had even really heard about trauma, but
Sure.
today it is becoming known. And, that
Yes.
70 or 80% of the people that are going to work for you are going to have some, maybe not the big T trauma, but some kind of
Yeah.
trauma, whether it's divorce or something that's happened in your life.
Yeah.
So I think that leadership will, it's like anything, you'll change due to the people that come to you. And if
Oh,
80%
absolutely.
or 70 or 80% of the people coming to you have some kind of a trauma, then you will learn how to lead those types of people and give everybody the same advantage that
Yeah.
when we
Well, there's even a
learn.
lot of research that we can all say we all have been through some trauma. So 100% because we all went through the pandemic together. So like depends how you define that. Like a lot of people experience that traumatically. So yeah, but it is important to like understand those different levels and just be attuned to maybe who you're working with and not making assumptions, but also creating a space and environment that is going to allow them to thrive.
Right. Well, Dr. Lacey, I thank you so much for this. I have a couple of profound moments
Yeah.
that I have here that it says um, it's really how our early life experiences don't just shape our pain, but they shape our potential.
Yeah.
Do you want to just add on to that a little bit?
Yes. Yes. So for me, I was never someone who felt like we were talking about like that my circumstances were going to dictate my future. I think just early on, I was this very like driven, I'm gonna be different, like this like inner mission on my heart. Gonna go to school, figure out things and try. And so for myself, I look back at all my experiences and I do have gratitude. I do. I don't necessarily look at them shame, guilt, regret. Like that's not gonna do anything for me, but I look at what did I learn from him. And it's just like any relationship. Like if you end a relationship and it was bad, like there are still lots of powerful lessons. And so I think those profound moments, it's really helpful for me to reflect back, have gratitude for those moments. Even my toxic boss, like again, it actually motivated me to do something that I've always wanted to do is have a business myself and have a larger impact. And I don't think if I would have not had that experience, then I would have made this leap. I would have stayed probably stuck in that like toxic environment for much longer, but it was like, okay, it's time. So I look back at that and I'm grateful for those moments. So I think that's a huge piece of the profound moments for myself and that
Yeah.
potential.
Well, and I think that, we just have to realize that, not every because sometimes we can get into that moment where, oh, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen?
Yeah.
But the little something that's kind of got me is it happened for me, not to me.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
if you can bring that to your mind that what this is not happening to me, what am I supposed to learn from it?
Yeah.
Then you're going to get through life just a lot easier, I think. Because that's,
I agree.
it took me a while to get there, but now that I'm there, and you can look back, Dr. Lacey, and see that your childhood, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now if you
Yeah.
didn't have your childhood, and you wouldn't be able to help people the way that you're doing now if you hadn't had your childhood. So,
Yeah.
you can look and you can say, well, it was terrible, but actually it was preparing you for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And look at your personality and look at the way that that you're just giving advice, and that's powerful advice because you've done it yourself. And
Yes.
it's hard to advise people if you haven't done it yourself. And
Yes.
you know you have climbed high mountains, and you're here, and you're able to tell other people how they can climb high mountains. And
Yes.
I think it's just wonderful. And the one is we can't lead others where we haven't gone ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that, kind of just what we were just talking about, right? Is you can't lead people to places where they haven't been themselves. And
Yeah.
and it's just it's just a way that you can accept, right? There's no shame. I always tell people, you can't really kind of say that, oh, you haven't ever experienced these types of things, because if we
Yeah.
go in one-on-one who's done the worst thing, right? I probably raised
Oh
my
yeah.
hand because, I've done a lot. I've done a lot of crazy stuff, but
Yeah.
it is that what kind of got me here.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Lacey, thank you so, so much. I know that, a lot of people are probably saying, "Oh, I need to become aware of myself. How do I get to work with you?" Can you tell us that?
Yes, no, absolutely. So my primary platform, I'm all over LinkedIn. Of course, have my own website. So it's Dr. Casey Lacey. It's KASILACEY. And then my website is just CaseyLacey.com. So you can find me there. Send me messages. I love to hear stories. If there's any way I can support you. So I do individual group coaching, all of the things. So just fortunate for the women that come in my lives and being able to support them in any way I can. And so grateful that I got to meet you, Jamie, and just love what you're doing in terms of this mission and really educating people about trauma and the impacts that it has on our life and our workplace. So,
Well, I'm so happy. One of the advantages of going through this summit is I get to meet so many people like you, and I'm learning
yeah.
so much. So I might be kind of normal when I get done with this.
Normal's boring. We're not
Yeah.
going for normal anymore.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you so, so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, and hopefully we'll be connected and we'll get to help more people in the future. Thank you so much, Dr. Lacey.
Thank you so much.